Asterisk asterisk asterisk. The following morning, when Diane and Kelly walked out of the hotel, there was a line of taxis in front of the entrance. The two women got into one, and Kelly gave the driver the number of Lois Reynolds's house on Marion Street. 15 minutes later, the driver pulled up to the curb. "Here we are." Kelly and Diane stared out the window, aghast. They were looking at the charred rubble of a house that had burned to the ground. There was nothing left but ashes, bits of burned wood, and a crumbled concrete foundation. "The bastards killed her," Kelly said. She looked at Diane despairingly. "This is the end of the road." Diane was thinking. "There's one last chance." Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Ray Fowler, the acerbic manager of the Denver airport, scowled at Kelly and Diane. "Let's see if I have this straight. You two are investigating a plane crash, without any authority, and you want me to arrange for you to question the air traffic controller who was on duty, so he can give you some privileged information? Do I have that right?" Diane and Kelly glanced at each other. Kelly said, "Well, we were hoping." "You were hoping what?" "That you would help us." "Why would I do that?" "Mr. Fowler, we just want to make sure that what happened to Gary Reynolds really was an accident." Ray Fowler was studying them closely. "It's interesting," he said. He sat there, bemused, and then spoke. "This has been on my mind a lot. Maybe you should discuss this with Howard Miller. He was the air traffic controller on duty when the accident happened. Here's his address. I'll call him and tell him you're coming over." "Thank you." "That's very kind of you," Diane said. Ray Fowler growled, "The only reason I'm doing this is because I think the FAA crash report is bullshit. We found the remains of the plane, but interestingly enough, the black box was missing. It just disappeared." Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Howard Miller lived in a small stucco house 6 miles from the airport. Miller was a small, energetic man in his 40s. He opened the door for Diane and Kelly. "Come in. Ray Fowler told me you were coming. What is it I can do for you?" "We'd like to talk to you, Mr. Miller." "Sit down." They sat on the couch. "Like some coffee?" "No, thanks." "You're here about the Gary Reynolds crash?" "Yes." "Was it an accident or?" Howard Miller shrugged. "I honestly don't know. I've never experienced anything like it in all the years I've been working here. Everything was going according to protocol. Gary Reynolds radioed for permission to land, and we cleared him. The next thing I know, he was only 2 miles away, reporting a hurricane." "A hurricane?" "Our weather monitors were clear. Later, I checked with the Weather Bureau. There was no wind at that time. To tell you the truth, I thought he was drunk or on drugs." "The next thing we all knew, he crashed into the side of a mountain." Kelly said, "I understand that the black box hasn't been found." "That's another thing," Howard Miller commented thoughtfully. "We found everything else. What happened to the black box? The damned FAA came in and thought we had our records wrong. They didn't believe us when we told them what had happened. You know when you can feel something is not right. Yes. I feel that something is not right, but I can't tell you what. I am sorry I can't be of more help. Diane and Kelly rose, frustrated. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Miller. We appreciate your time. Not at all. As Miller started to lead the two women toward the door, he said, I hope Gary's sister will be all right. Kelly stopped. What? She's in the hospital, you know. Poor thing. Her house burned down in the middle of the night. They don't know if she's going to make it or not. Diane froze. What happened? The fire department thinks it was caused by an electrical short. Lois managed to crawl out of the front door, onto the lawn, but by the time the firefighters got to her, she was in pretty bad shape. Diane tried to keep her voice calm. What hospital is she in? The University of Colorado Hospital. She's in the burn center there. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. The nurse at the reception desk at 3 North said, I'm sorry, Miss Reynolds is not allowed visitors. Kelly asked, can you tell us what room she's in? No, I'm afraid I can't. This is an emergency, Diane said. We have to see her and no one sees her without written authorization. There was a note of finality in her voice. Diane and Kelly looked at each other. Well, thank you. The two women walked away. What are we going to do? Kelly asked. This is our last chance. I have a plan. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. A uniformed messenger carrying a large, beribboned parcel approached the reception desk. I have a package here for Lois Reynolds. I'll sign for it, the nurse said. The messenger shook his head. Sorry. My orders are to deliver it to her personally. It's very valuable. The nurse hesitated. Then I'll have to go with you. That's fine. He followed the nurse to the end of the hall. When they reached room 391, the nurse started to open the door and the messenger handed her the package. You can take it in to her, he said. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. One flight down, the messenger walked over to the bench where Diane and Kelly were waiting. Room 391, he told them. Thanks, Diane said gratefully. She handed him some money. The two women took the stairs to the third floor, stepped into the corridor, and waited until the nurse was on the telephone. Her back was turned to them. They quickly started down the hall and entered room 391. Lois Reynolds was lying in bed with a spiderweb of tubes and wires attached to her body. She was heavily bandaged. Her eyes were closed as Kelly and Diane approached the bed. Diane said softly, Miss Reynolds, I'm Diane Stevens and this is Kelly Harris. Our husbands worked for KIG. Lois Reynolds's eyes slowly opened and tried to focus. When she spoke, her voice was a shadow of a whisper. What? Kelly said, our husbands worked for KIG. They were both killed. We thought that because of what happened to your brother, you might be able to help us. Lois Reynolds tried to shake her head. I can't help you, Gary is dead. Her eyes welled up with tears. Diane leaned close. Did your brother say anything to you before the accident? Gary was a wonderful man. Her voice was slow and pained. He was killed in a plane crash. Diane said patiently, did he say anything to you that might help us find out what happened? Lois Reynolds closed her eyes. Miss Reynolds, please don't go to sleep yet. Please. This is very important. Did your brother say anything to you that might help us? Lois Reynolds opened her eyes again and looked at Diane, puzzled. Who are you? Diane said, we think your brother was murdered. Lois Reynolds murmured, I know. The two of them felt a cold chill. Why? Kelly asked. Prima? It was a whisper. Kelly leaned closer. Prima. Gary told me about it a few days before he was killed. Their machine that can control weather. Poor Gary. He never got to Washington. Diane said, Washington. Yes, they were all going to see some senator about Prima. Gary said Prima was bad. Kelly asked, do you remember the senator's name? No. Please think. Lois Reynolds was mumbling. Senator somebody. Senator who? Kelly asked. Leuven van Leuven. He was going to see her. He was going to meet. The door flew open, and a doctor wearing a white jacket, with a stethoscope draped around his neck, strode into the room. He looked at Diane and Kelly, furious. Didn't anyone tell you no visitors were allowed in here? Kelly said, I'm sorry. We had to speak to leave, please. The two women looked at Lois Reynolds. Goodbye. Get well. The man watched them leave the room. When the door closed, he moved to the bed, picked up a pillow, and leaned over Lois Reynolds. Chapter 40. Kelly and Diane made their way down to the main lobby of the hospital. Diane said, that's why Richard and Mark were going to Washington, to see Senator Van Leuven. How do we get hold of her? Simple. Diane took out her cell phone. Kelly held up a hand to stop her. No. Let's use a payphone. They got the telephone number of the Senate office building from information, and Diane called from a public phone. Senator Van Leuven's office. I'd like to speak to the senator, please. May I say who's calling? Diane said, it's a personal matter. Your name, please. I can't just tell her it's very important. I'm sorry, I can't do that. The line was disconnected. Diane turned to Kelly. We can't use our names. Diane called the number again. Senator Van Leuven's office. Please, listen to me. This is not a crank call. I need to speak to the senator, and I can't give you my name. Then I'm afraid I can't let you speak to the senator. The call was disconnected. Diane dialed again. Senator Van Leuven's office. Please don't hang up. I know you're doing your job, but this is a matter of life and death. I'm calling from a payphone. I'm going to give you the number. Please have the senator call me. She gave the secretary the number and heard the secretary slam the phone down. Kelly said, "What do we do now?" "We wait." They waited for 2 hours, and finally Diane said, "It's not going to work." The phone rang. Diane took a deep breath and rushed to pick it up. "Hello." An annoyed female voice said, "This is Senator Van Leuven." "Who is this?" Diane held the phone toward Kelly, so that they could both hear what the senator was saying. Diane was so choked up, she could hardly speak. "Senator, my name is Diane Stevens." "I'm here with Kelly Harris." "Do you know who we are?" "No, I don't, and I'm afraid our husbands were murdered on their way to meet with you." There was a gasp. "Oh, my God. Richard Stevens and Mark Harris." "Yes. Your husbands made an appointment to meet with me, but my secretary received a call saying that they had changed their plans. Then they died." "That call was not from them, Senator," Diane said. "They were murdered to stop them from seeing you." "What?" She sounded in shock. "Why would anyone? They were killed to prevent them from talking to you. Kelly and I would like to come to Washington and tell you what our husbands were trying to tell you." There was a brief hesitation. "I'll meet with you, but not in my office. It's too public. If what you're saying is true, it could be dangerous. I have a home in Southampton, Long Island. I can meet you there." "Where are you calling from?" "Denver." "Just a moment." 3 minutes later, the senator came back on the line. The next flight out of Denver to New York is a red-eye. It's a United flight, non-stop to LaGuardia. It leaves at 12:25 a.m. and arrives in New York at 6:09 a.m. If the flight is full, there's one will be on that flight. Kelly looked at Diane, surprised. "Diane, what if we can't get?" Diane held up a reassuring hand. "We'll be on it. When you get to the airport, a gray Lincoln Town car will be waiting for you." "Go right to the car." The driver is Asian. His name is Kunio, Kunio. He'll take you to my home. I'll be waiting for you there. "Thank you, Senator." Diane replaced the receiver and took a deep breath. She turned to Kelly. "We're all set." Kelly said, How do you know we can get on that flight? I have a plan. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. The concierge at the hotel arranged a rental car, and in 45 minutes, Diane and Kelly were on their way to the airport. Kelly said, "I don't know whether I'm more excited or more frightened. I don't think we have anything to be frightened about anymore. It looks like a lot of people tried to meet with the senator, but none of them made it, Diane. They were all killed first. Then we're going to be the first to make it?" Kelly said, "I wish we had. I know. A weapon." "You said that. We have our wits." "Yeah. I wish we had a weapon." Kelly looked out the car window. "Pull over." Diane pulled over to the curb. "What is it?" "There's something I have to do." They had stopped in front of a beauty parlor. Kelly opened the car door. Diane said, "Where are you going?" "I'm going to get a new hairdo." Diane said, "You're joking." "No, I'm not." "You're getting a new hairdo now?" "Kelly, we're on our way to the airport, to catch a plane, and there's no time to." "Diane, you never know what's going to happen. And in case I should die, I want to look pretty." Diane sat there, speechless, as Kelly walked into the beauty parlor. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. "20 minutes later, Kelly came out. She was wearing a black wig that was a luxurious upsweep piled high in the back. "I'm ready," Kelly said. "Let's go kick some ass." Chapter 41. "There's a white Lexus following us," Kelly said. "I know. There are half a dozen men in it." "Can you lose them?" "I don't have to." Kelly stared at her. "What?" "Watch." They were approaching an airport gate with a sign that read "Deliveries Only." The guard behind the gate had opened it to admit the car. The men in the Lexus watched as Kelly and Diane got out and stepped into an official airport car that started across the tarmac. When the Lexus reached the gate, the guard said, "This is a private entrance. But you let that other car in." "This is a private entrance." The guard closed the gate. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. The official airport car crossed the tarmac and stopped at the side of a jumbo jet. As Diane and Kelly stepped out, Howard Miller was waiting. "You got here all right?" "Yes," Diane said. "Thanks so much for making the arrangements." "My pleasure." His face became grim. "I hope some good comes out of all of this." Kelly said, "Thank Lois Reynolds for us and tell her." Howard Miller's expression changed. "Lois Reynolds passed away last night." The two women both felt a sense of shock. It took Kelly a moment to speak. I'm sorry. What happened? Diane asked. I guess her heart gave out. Howard Miller looked over at the jet. They're ready to go. I've arranged seats for you near the door. Thanks again. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Howard Miller watched as Kelly and Diane went up the ramp. Moments later, the flight attendant closed the door, and the plane began to taxi. Kelly turned to Diane and smiled. We've made it. We outsmarted all those brainiacs. What are you going to do after we talk to Senator Van Leuven? I hadn't really thought about it, Diane said. Are you going back to Paris? It depends. Do you think you'll be staying in New York? Yes. Kelly said, then maybe I'll stick around New York for a while. Then we might go to Paris together. They sat there, smiling at each other. Diane said, I was just thinking how proud Richard and Mark would be if they knew we're going to finish the job they started. You bet. Diane looked out the window and up at the sky, and said softly, Thank you, Richard. Kelly glanced at Diane, shook her head, and said nothing. Richard, I know you can hear me, darling. We're going to finish what you started. We're going to avenge you and your friends. It won't bring you back, but it will help a little. Do you know what I miss most about you, my love? Everything. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. When the plane landed at LaGuardia Airport 3.5 hours later, Diane and Kelly were the first passengers to disembark. Diane remembered Senator Van Leuven's words. When you get to the airport, a gray Lincoln Town car will be waiting for you. The car was waiting at the terminal entrance. Standing next to it was an elderly Japanese man in a chauffeur's uniform. He stood up straight as Kelly and Diane approached him. Mrs. Stevens. Mrs. Harris. Yes. I'm Cuneo. He opened the door of the car and they stepped in. Moments later, they were on their way to Southampton. It is a 2-hour drive, Cuneo said. The scenery is very beautiful. The last thing they were interested in was scenery. Both were busily thinking about the quickest way to explain to the senator what had happened. Kelly said to Diane, Do you think the senator will be in danger when we tell her what we know? I'm sure she'll have protection. She'll know how to handle this. I hope so. After almost 2 hours the town car finally drove up to a large limestone mansion with a slate roof and tall, slender chimneys, in the style of 18th century England. There were extensive, manicured grounds, and they could see a separate house for the servant quarters and garage,